Hello and welcome to the new series of Drishti IAS. I am Pooja Dwivedi, and in this segment today, we are going to discuss about El Nino and La Nina. This topic is important from the perspective of prelims and also from the perspective of GS mains paper. So let's begin with the topics of discussion that we are going to look at. Starting with the news, we will cover all the topics slowly and gradually. So why is it in the news? Because recently in a report published by the name of Nature Climate Change, it has been computerized, it has been computed through a supercomputer what will happen to El Nino and La Nina if there will be an increase in the CO2 levels. So that is what we are going to have a look at. So this entire news segment, as I told you, the published report is by the name of Nature Climate Change, and the South Korea's fastest supercomputer Aleph has been used. So here it has been said that what can be achieved in 1 second by Aleph or supercomputers, that could be done in 45 million years by one human being. So through the computerized mechanism of increasing the level of CO2 to double and quadruple, what will happen to El Nino and La Nina has been observed. And atmospheric carbon dioxide can cause the weakening of future simulated El Nino sea surface temperature variability, and the El Nino Southern Oscillation, the intensity of the temperature cycle can weaken as CO2 increases. Okay, so when CO2 will increase at the double rate, the weakening will be more, and again if we talk about the weakening, it will have an impact on the climate change, and again if it will be raised to quadruple, that means 4 times the CO2, the system will become more intense and robust. Also, the model generated 2 quadrillion bytes of data in 1 year when it worked for non-stop, in a non-stop manner. Also, that was enough to fill about 2000 hard disks. So this is the intensity. This is not very important, but important for you to understand how frequently and intensely these supercomputers work. Let's talk about El Nino. So El Nino in Spanish, it means the little boy. It means the warming of the eastern tropical Pacific Ocean, that is this entire region, and it works simultaneously with southern oscillation. That means the change in the atmospheric pressure, it will work along the change in the temperature of the ocean. That is why this is a part of the larger system of El Nino Southern Oscillation. So El Nino Southern Oscillation or El Nino, it is not very predictable in nature. It comes at an interval of 2 to 7 years, and when it sets in for about a year. So whenever that happens, this will have an impact on the climate of the region. As the temperature will get warmer over the oceans, the pressure will be less. Okay, always keep that in mind. And the warmer the region will be, there will be a difference in the western tropical Pacific Ocean and eastern tropical Pacific Ocean. So El Nino is a complex weather phenomenon which has a huge impact on the intensity of ocean currents, on the weather pattern in Southeast Asia, in Australia, in South America, in Indonesia as well. And this was for the first time ever, it was discovered by a Peruvian fisherman when he felt that there were unusual warming of this particular region. Okay, so let's move on and talk about the impacts of El Nino. El Nino means unusual warming of the surface waters in the eastern Pacific, tropical Pacific Ocean, that means between the 2 tropics of the Pacific. And it is a warm phase. It is a warm phase, and it is much more frequent than La Nina. La Nina does not occur at that frequency as much as El Nino does. And it is not a regular cycle. There are many impacts on it. First, if we talk about the impacts of the ocean, it will of course have an impact on the temperature. Secondly, it will have an impact on the speed of ocean currents, right? And it will therefore have an impact on the rainfall, which will be increased in nature as the convection above the ocean will increase. So will the precipitation. So there will be unnatural rainfall, of course, that is in the South American region. Also, when there will be an unnatural rainfall, it will be flooding, and when it comes to flooding, it will also create diseases such as malaria, dengue, and also because of the increase in wildfires, it will also cause an impact on the respiratory system of the people. And as the South America will receive a lot of rain, so the Indonesia region and Australia region, it will be having drought. That is the problem. And when we talk about drought in the region, it will lead to of course, the slackening of river streams, the drying up of lakes. And there are certain positive impacts. That means it will decrease, or it will not make happen hurricanes in Atlantic. In South America and West South America, we talked about the flooding of the region. In Western Pacific, basically what will it do? In the Western Pacific, when will, suppose this is the area affected by El Nino. When this water will start moving towards Western Pacific, the upwelling will occur. That means the colder, nutrient-rich water near the Peruvian coast, near the South American coast, it will start to move upward. So, this is also one of the impacts. If we talk about El Nino's impact on India, it causes the weakening of the monsoon in India, and that is why it may also cause drought-like situations in India and Southeast Asia. Okay, let's move forward. Now, if we talk about La Nina, La Nina means the little girl, and that is in Spanish, and this is unusual cooling of the Eastern Pacific region in the tropical area, and because of the decrease in temperature, the pressure will increase. And the pressure will increase because, of course, we talked about El Nino before, the relevance of pressure with the temperature. Here it will increase. And when La Nina will intensify, that means a decrease in temperature, a lot of decrease in temperature, and this decrease in temperature will sustain itself for 1 to 3 years. La Nina is very important when it comes to the monsoon of India. Any weather pattern change with respect to La Nina in India, it will create monsoon that is related to summer monsoon I am talking about. It will create a lot of precipitation in the northwestern parts of India because India is dependent on rainfall for agriculture and other allied industry. It is generally very good for India. Okay, so La Nina, as we discussed here, water temperature in Eastern Pacific, it gets comparatively colder than normal. And there is a high pressure, as we discussed, and cooler than normal waters in the tropical Pacific, they start occurring. And the impacts, because lower than normal air pressure are there on the Western Pacific. So that is why it will create a rainier than normal condition. There will be a lot of rain over southeastern Africa and northern Brazil. Also, strong La Nina events are associated with catastrophic floods, that is in the Australia. And as you remembered, I talked about drought in Australia and Indonesia when El Nino intensifies. So there are higher than normal pressure over the central and eastern Pacific, and keep in mind when La Nina sets in, it is for a longer period than El Nino. Alright, moving on. Let's talk about what are going to be the impacts of the current changes. The changes here that we are talking about are the highlights of the report published. So future El Nino events will lose heat to atmosphere more quickly. Okay, right now the heat is not lost to the atmosphere as quickly as the intensification of CO2 will make it happen. And there will be a reduced temperature difference. Here only we talked about that because of the intensification of the temperature in this region, there is a difference between the temperatures of this region. Now El Nino, if it will lose heat much faster, then of course the surface temperature of the oceans, they will not have any kind of extremes. Okay, so that is another impact that is going to occur. Also, weakening of these waves. There are three prominent tropical waves. those waves will also, if weaken, and that is to in the projected future, it can cause in the disruption of La Nina. Now, as if we go per the logic, of course, when very important weather, climate and weather patterns, they get disrupted. These weather patterns have set in for more than thousands and thousands of years. Now, if they get disrupted, of course, there will be a change in the climate as well. Also, if we talk about the conclusion, in conclusion, we can only reach to one thing. If unabated, this is what I am quoting from here, if unabated CO2 will keep on increasing, the future has already been predicted by the supercomputers. So what this technology is trying to tell us, it is presenting us a scenario which we should avoid, and that can start only by being well informed about the future that the supercomputers have already made us. Secondly, in order to avoid that situation, we have to formulate our policies which are in tandem to the goals internationally as well as nationally. So that's it for today. Let's move on and look at our means-based question. Describe the phenomenon of El Nino, Southern Oscillation, and also discuss the consequences of unabated climate change on it. Okay, so that's it for today. Tomorrow we shall meet again with another segment. Until then, stay updated and thank you so much for watching.